Hello and welcome to Gamer Social Club's Spoilercast. This is the third installment of this show, although I'll probably have to stop keeping track soon. But this is regarding Capcom's latest IP, Pragmata. I am your host, Daire, and I'm joined by the always wonderful Candy.
Hello, how's it going?
Yes, so we're here for this entry of the spoiler cast. But if you want to keep track of all of our other content, make sure to check out the Gamer Social Club YouTube channel and the website at gamersocialclub.ca, where you can find all of our daily written content, news, reviews, guides, and more. And if you're also interested in becoming part of the community, make sure to jump into the Gamer Social Club Discord channel, where you can find some of the editors, some of the contributors to the website, alongside our wonderful community. So, Candy, this is for Pragmata. This is
Mm-hmm.
Capcom's first new. It's their first new IP in years, sure,
Yes.
but there was also Kunitsugami in 2023, which I don't want to overlook. That was a smaller game.
Mhm.
But this one has been a long time coming. We both played it. It's been out for roughly a month
Yeah.
now. What did you think of Pragmata?
So I will say I was shocked at how much I enjoyed it. Um, and I will say I was shocked not when I finally got my hands on it a month ago, but when I got a chance to play it at New York Comic Con last
Yeah.
year. So New York Comic Con's not usually known for gaming in that way, but Capcom was set up there and they had a few games on display. And I was like, you know what, let me try this, right? I keep hearing people talk about it. It's a new IP, like let's give it a shot. And I'm not typically like a shooter person.
Yeah,
Uh,
I was gonna ask actually. You're not big on Capcom, are you? Like I
um,
know you don't play Resident Evil.
I've played some Resident Evil, but they're a little
Okay.
scary. I've played
Yeah.
four. I got through four and five. Um, you know,
Okay.
I've played some of the Monster Hunter games. I really want to dive into Monster Hunter
Right.
stories, just the time. Um, but I dabble with Capcom, let's say, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
depends on the game. When I was younger, I used to play more fighting games, and so some of those. But with this, and I was like, it's a shooter, but there's the sort of puzzle aspect to it, and that was what really got me interested, right? The
Mhm.
hacking with the puzzle. So I tried it out at Comic Con, and I was floored to the point that I tried the demo, and then I went to lunch and I sat at lunch and wrote like a hands-on experience for the site while I was sitting at
Damn.
lunch because I was like, I need to get this out and talk about
Yeah.
this because it was so good. And it was really funny because the person there was like, oh yeah, it was like 25-minute increments that you could play it. Uh, and they're like, oh, well, you only have 20 minutes, so you might not get through the whole demo. And I was like, oh, that's fine. Got through the whole demo with like time to spare. And I was like, booyah, I'm good. I did this. But I think that excitement and being like, wait, this actually flows so
Yeah.
well was like, yes, I'm going to get this game when it comes out. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sold.
That's really cool. Yeah. So I actually just want to mention as well to the viewers, this section we're going to just talk about the game casually without spoilers. So you can listen to this part if you've not played the game yet. We're just going to be giving our overall thoughts, and then we'll make it very clear when we're
Hmm.
transitioning into spoilers, when we're going to talk about things like the story, like the ending and stuff. But yeah, no, like this is one that I had been excited for ever since it was first announced at the PlayStation 5 reveal event, if you can believe it, all the way back in
Hmm.
2020. Because I am a huge Capcom fan. Like, my favorite series is Devil May Cry. I adore Resident Evil. I love Ace Attorney to bits as well. And so I was always going to be on board with whatever Capcom was doing next on a single player front. They do a lot
Hmm.
of multiplayer stuff that kind of goes nowhere, and has the,
Hmm.
the the game with the dinosaurs and stuff. Um, but I remember this one being very interesting because it looked like, in terms of what it was going for visually and like aesthetically, it looked very different from anything they'd done before. It looked similar to a Hideo Kojima game, I
Yeah.
thought, when I first saw it revealed. Because, yeah, obviously Hugh in the suit looks like Kojima Productions' mascot, but also like there was the sci-fi angle, there was the action kind of shooting gameplay, there was a bigger emphasis on story and like
Mm-hmm.
acting as well. Um, and I thought it was really cool when it was first revealed, but then of course it seemed to kind of go through like a development hell period where we were getting updates and then we weren't, and then eventually I think by like 2022 or something it had just disappeared,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be years until we would actually see them bring it back out, where of course they did last year, and people like yourself, other people got to play it, and I think that was the first time that it had really kind of struck people that like, oh, the mechanic behind this game, the actual gameplay hook is really interesting. The idea
Yes.
that you're using, I guess on controller, you're using the face buttons to do a hacking mini game while also shooting with the triggers. So you're essentially controlling two characters at the one time. And that's like when I was really like, okay, Capcom's like cooking here. Like they're really bringing this out as like a fresh idea, a fresh IP. I think comparisons probably jumped off at that point to be like, this is very much like something they would have done in like the PS2 or PS3 era. Um, yeah, so I that's how I started to kind of get
Mm-hmm.
excited for it. But what would you say you feel about the game now having played it?
Oh my God. It is definitely, I would say, in my top three games this year, right? I'd have to really sit down and think a little bit more critically about like
Yeah,
the games, but it's definitely top three. I think because the story that it told, the gameplay mechanics, and this has nothing to do with the gameplay itself, but I will also give Capcom some credit for poking a little bit of fun at themselves with the development, right? Because let's not forget there was one point where they just had like the piece of paper that said "We promise it's real" or whatever the phrasing was, right? When they
yes,
were like
yeah,
reintroducing it. So kudos to them for being able to be like, yeah, we know this, we promise we're getting there, we're getting there. And I will say though, for all the time that it took, because once I was interested in it, I started like researching, like, when did this start? What happened?
yeah,
All these delays. They cooked, and you know what?
yeah,
I'm glad they took the time with it because I think this easily could have been something that if rushed, right, it wouldn't have flowed as well because that was a lot of, when I was talking to people, that was a lot of the concern. Like, will the controls flow well? Will it feel clunky? Will it be too
yeah,
much? Right? Is it hard to balance? And at no point did I feel that, right? Like
yeah,
I didn't feel torn. At first, yes, it takes a little bit of getting used to because you almost just have to like train your brain to be like, okay, I have to do both at the same time. And, you know, talking to some people, they're like, wait, so you're controlling the hacking with the face buttons? And I'm like, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, a lot of people are like, why not the diagonal button? Like the D-pad. And I was like, nope, it's the face button. So getting into that, but once you get into that, it feels so natural, right? And I
yeah,
think that's huge kudos to them for being able to make it flow in such a way. Um, the story, which we'll dive into later,
yeah,
very, very good story. And then of course you have the adorableness uh, of Diana, right? Super, super cute. And this is in the advertisement, so not a spoiler, right? But just the interactions and the drawings. And I love that
yeah,
now, the joke when you sort of talk about Pragmata is like, Pragmata gives you the only AI art that I will accept, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, all the little drawings and stuff that she does. I think what was interesting is like when the game was coming out is and I hope this isn't too kind of pushing towards the spoiler stuff, but like the fact that like their dynamic, Hugh and Diana's dynamic, is like very heartwarming and very
mm-hmm.
positive throughout. Like it really does a spin on the kind of sad dad kind of
Yes.
games that we've kind of become accustomed to, with your Last of Us and God of
Mm-hmm.
Wars and stuff like that, which definitely have like a purpose and have like a role to play,
Oh yeah.
but they have been it's like it's very refreshing to play something that's a little bit more just like whimsical in its approach to that.
Mm-hmm.
It's playing around with ideas of like technology and AI and um just general sci-fi premises as well, but at the core of it is just like this really charming dynamic between two very likable characters that
Yes.
really helps keep things fresh. And then also the way that blends back into the gameplay where you're technically controlling the both of them during
Mm-hmm.
combat, which is just really cool and is very classic Capcom. I keep thinking about how cool it would be to have these characters in like some of the fighting games or something, because that's just like mechanically that's just the type of thing that I expect from Capcom, where they're just thinking outside the box when it comes to
Yes.
like, okay, we want the player to be able to control these two things. Well, let's give them two different characters actually that are filling those purposes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also like you mentioned, the heartwarming nature of these two that is what really also drew me in, and the way that they bond. Because and I've said this on other podcasts, stuff like that. Like I'm a daddy's girl, right? Like that is who I am, and that's okay. So it's also very charming to see like parts of that I can relate to, right? Where I'm like, oh yeah, like the way Hugh cares about her, and the way that she sort of occasionally like pokes fun at him, but in a very
Yeah,
caring way. I'm like, yeah, that it feels very real, and it
yeah,
feels very grounded, despite the fact that we are talking about this you know mission that's happening in space, and all these things
yeah,
that are happening in the world that's created, right? I'm like, no, but these characters feel very real, right? I could see them walking down the street and be like, oh, there's Hugh and Diana, right?
yeah.
And I will say the other thing too is I normally don't gravitate towards like sci-fi space sort of games, right?
Right.
Like I'm definitely more of a high fantasy sort of gamer, right? So it's like Mass Effect, I'm like, nah, give me, Dragon Age, right? Like that's normally where I
Right.
go. But then with this, right, because of the characters, because of the relationship, because the gameplay mechanics being so smooth, yes, it's still very much a sci-fi game that is set in space. And there were even some moments, because the graphics and everything are so good, that I was like, oh, I almost feel like, I don't want to say motion sick, but almost like uncomfortable in some of the very open space things, because I was like, oh, is this
Right.
a fear that is suddenly unlocked? Maybe, right? But I could get through all of that because of, you know, how smooth it was, and wanting to
Yeah.
see this story to the end, right? So again, I mean, Capcom really, they really did an amazing job with this one.
Yeah. I think the last thing I'll say on the gameplay before we kind of transition into like the spoiler stuff is I think it really nails what I think some of Capcom's best games do. Like in terms of like action games like Resident Evil 4 and Devil May Cry 5 and stuff, is just the pacing is incredible. It
Yes.
always keeps you moving forward. I love the decision to make it level based. I love the decision to have the hub area where you're upgrading
Mm-hmm.
Hugh's abilities and you're interacting with Diana and the weird little screen robot thing. Um, and I love just generally how they knew to make this just like a 12-hour story. It's just going to be the exact narrative that they wanted to be. It doesn't waste any time. It's just go, go, go right from the beginning. The story, I think, is like just generally really good. It's never too like the stakes are never like insanely high.
Yes.
There's like maybe a few moments where things get like very dramatic, but it still feels like for the most part, I almost compare it to like a Steven Spielberg film, like
Okay.
from the 80s or something. It's just constantly got this lighthearted kind of tone to it that never feels like it feels like a quite a good break from something like Resident Evil,
Yeah.
which is obviously very silly as well, but can be very intense.
Mm-hmm. Yes, totally agree. I do agree also with like the levels, right? I think that cuts it out in a way that I think is respectful of a lot of gamers' time, right?
Yes,
And
yeah,
I love me a good long game, right? I will play a JRPG until, I'm 90 years old. Um,
yeah,
but it is nice to see a game also where it's like, okay, this is the type of game it is. We're going to break it into levels. I also like that it shows you the percentage of things, what you're
oh
missing,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
not, oh, well, go around and just spend time aimlessly searching so that you can. It's like, no, here's what you need, right? Here's
yeah.
this.
It
You've
really
cleared it
wants you to
100%.
100% it.
It does. It does. And it gives you just enough, right, that you can 100% it. If you take not a ton of time to search, just a little bit, right? Because
Mhm.
let's not forget, it'll tell you what you're missing, and then you have Diana scan so that you
Yeah.
can scan to see how far is it, where is it, right? So you
Yes. Yeah.
know this is what I'm looking for. This is, what I need. So okay, 100%ed this. Now I can go back to the shelter once I find, a station, right? It's not even
Yeah.
like you have to finish the level to go back, right? There are many of these different points that you can travel back to. Um,
Yeah.
and the training missions are there that you can do
Yeah. The
with
VR
cabin.
missions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like if you're like, I need a little more practice, or
Yeah.
I just want to get more coins, I want to just
Yeah. They get
enjoy
a
the
lot.
gameplay more.
They get a lot out of the gameplay as well because it's like the main story doesn't overstay its welcome. It's pretty like efficiently paced. But if
Mm-hmm.
you are finished that and you do want more out of the game, there's those VR missions, there's some post game content,
Yeah.
there's all of this stuff to like keep you kind of make you really feel it because this isn't even like it's not like a $70 game or $80 game or anything like that. It's a $60 game, which I guess is a budget price nowadays. Um, and it feels like they really just wanted this thing to be like a success in that way. Like we're not going to overcharge for it. We're going to make it very focused on what,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be. And if people want to get more out of it, well, we've made all of these, extra missions and extra things to do to get, you know,
Yeah.
your money's worth or feel satisfied out of that. Because I will be honest, towards the end, I was kind of feeling like the gameplay kind of hook, the hacking stuff, it was kind of beginning to get a little long in the tooth, and then the game knows exactly when to end to avoid that feeling like
Mm-hmm.
it's just completely outstaying its welcome or just overdoing it.
Yeah, 100%.
So I think with that, we're basically, from us it's a two thumbs up. I'm guessing, like, yeah, it's
Oh,
a great
100%.
game.
Yeah.
If you like action games, if you like Capcom games, who are just on an incredible run this year, I think that you should check it out. I actually kind of like it a little more than Resident Evil.
Okay.
I didn't get to talk about Resident Evil, but we I had some issues with Resident Evil 9, and I think ultimately I did actually end up liking Pragmata a little bit more personally. So that's our recommendation there, I think, on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
GG's
Uh
Capcom. Great year. Great first half a
yeah.
year.
Yeah, yeah. And also, I was thinking in April when this came out, there was an insane amount of like space stuff coming out in the very short amount of time. There was like
Yeah.
Project Hail Mary, there was the oh my god, the Artemis 2 mission was happening. There was Saros that came out. There was like so much stuff that was like sci-fi or like space moon oriented that was coming out at that time.
Hmm.
It was I feel like I'm going to be nostalgic for that in a few years. Um but okay, so we're putting up the spoiler wall now. We're going to start talking about story stuff.
Yes.
Uh if you've not played Pragmata, then get out. So,
You can take a pause, come back
yeah,
after.
or keep listening, I guess. I don't know.
If you don't mind
Um,
spoilers, yeah. This is a
yeah,
spoiler class that you clicked on, so.
I think I gave you a heads up going into the ending, right? Because so much of the game is very whimsical. It's very fun. It's this really loving relationship between Hugh and Diana, where it's like Hugh's not like kind of most typical kind of
Hmm.
dad video game protagonist where he's like losing his cool with her or anything, or he's like so tortured to have to be a father and all of this stuff. Instead, it's very upbeat, and as I was alluding to earlier, the stakes are pretty like low, I guess.
Hmm.
Other than is it six? Is that the character?
8.
Eight. Yeah.
Hmm.
Like her seemingly like dying and stuff and that having
Yep.
an effect on Diana and stuff. Um but then you get to the ending. And what did you take of the ending? Because I got emotional at the
Oh,
end of it.
I got so emotional. I, well, especially since, you're playing through and the infection happens, and there was
Yeah.
a moment, where I kind of knew it was coming
Yes.
because I think he says something about it, like, oh, if a human gets infected, and she says like, I don't think I can take it out of human, like you can't take it off of like human flesh, or
Yeah.
however she phrases it, right?
Should
Um,
we preface like I guess the idea is there's a virus spreading throughout the game. It's the thing
mhm.
that when they get to the moon, it's infecting the robots. Hugh at some point gets it, and that is kind of what's leading into the finale.
Yeah, the final act. Oh,
Yeah.
um, and so she says this, and I was like, oh no, but because everything has been so, as you perfectly use, whimsical, I'm like, okay, maybe she just
Yeah.
doesn't know that she can like help him, right? Maybe she hasn't figured it out yet because she has sort of been upgraded with everything that has happened, and she unlocked a new
Yeah.
power. um so then when he makes the ultimate sacrifice,
Yeah.
right? And when you think about it, it's, yeah, of course, you know any halfway decent parent, right? I'm not just going to say father, like any parent would say,
Yeah.
I will make the sacrifice for my child, right? Like I will
Yeah.
always sacrifice for my child first, right? Um, and he does that. And when you think about it, right? When you think about it logically, it's like you're doing this for an AI that could live on this ship and be fine and blow, right? When you think about it that way, it's like, okay, it's
Yes.
gonna be fine.
Yeah.
All right. But he does this to give her an opportunity to experience all the things that they have talked about throughout their time
Yes.
here.
Yeah. Throughout the game, you're going and you're getting these artifacts, I think they call them, where it's things from Earth, like
Mm-hmm.
sandcastles and a water gun and balloons
Yeah.
and things like this. So Diana's being filled with this promise that she's going to get to Earth eventually at some point.
And he fulfills his promise, but he
Yeah.
fulfills his promise without him, right?
Yeah.
And I just remember being so heartbroken,
Yeah.
and I was streaming it, right? So I'm
Yeah.
sitting here, I'm like, wait, but she's by herself. Like, who's and my
Yeah.
immediate reaction was like, who's gonna take care of her? Who's gonna be
Yeah.
there for her? Like, who's gonna understand her the way that Hugh has understood her? Like, what, And this is like all the things that are like going through my mind, and I'm just like, she's alone, right? Which
Mhm.
is a heartbreaking because when you first meet her, she was alone, right? She
Mhm.
was in storage or whatever it is, and she says like that she was alone. There was nobody else there, right?
Yeah.
And now she's alone again, but with these memories and with this father figure knowing that he's out there, right?
Mhm.
Is just so heartbreaking. You just see her steps on the sand, and she's
Yeah.
looking up because she knows that's where she came from. And I'm just like, oh my god, so what comes next for her, right?
Yeah.
And it's also touching that she landed on the beach, because earlier in the game, if you're listening to the interactions with them enough, Hugh does say that he had a house by the beach,
Yeah.
right? With a
Well, there's
beach
also the
view.
scene where they're on the beach
There's,
in
yep,
the space
in
station.
the, yep,
Yeah.
with the earth memory. But I'm like, so, you know to me, I'm like, so you could potentially be not that far from his home, but his home is
Yes.
empty,
Yeah.
right? So to me, it was like, yes, there was the beach and the earth memory and all that, but I'm like, but this is where he felt at home, right, with a view of the
Yeah.
beach, and now here she is, but again, alone.
Yeah.
And that was just doubly heartbreaking.
Yeah. Did you catch there's a reference actually when she reaches up to the moon and like there's a shot of like her hand in front of it. That's actually a reference to the logo for the Capcom engine. The
Hmm.
engine is the RE engine, which doesn't stand for Resident Evil. It stands for Reach for the Moon, which I don't get how that makes sense, but yeah. So the logo of that is somebody's hand in front of the moon. I was so distracted by that. I was like crying, and I was like, "God damn you, Capcom! Like, it's so stupid." But no, it's what I was really surprised by is just the fact that like when this game was coming out, for years we've been hearing this is Capcom's big new IP. This is a big new IP. So you see like when Hugh gets like infected, it's like okay, like all right, like they're not gonna kill him because this is
Yes.
Capcom's new IP. This is there's obviously going to be a sequel and stuff. and like to some extent that's true, but like still watching that scene, seeing that, I just was like so surprised by how much they had gone for that. Like
Mm-hmm.
oh, this guy's dying,
Yeah.
and uh, it was such like it was really like a left turn for the story after it kind of felt like these characters were kind of immune. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
Diana gets injured at one point, and yeah, obviously, like I was kind of like, oh my god, my baby during that scene,
Oh my
but
God, I was so mad.
you yeah, like yes, because of the way the game, yes, it achieves its goal of making you care for Diana. That moment is obviously very intense, but there's still kind of like it's gonna be okay. This is gonna be all right.
Mm-hmm.
But that scene at the end genuinely surprised me and caught me
Yes.
off guard emotionally because I was like, I didn't think we were gonna be taking risks like this.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, like the secret ending exists, and it does kind of imply that Hugh is still around. You know that there will be. We can talk about the secret ending, right?
Yeah, we can
You'd
talk
seen
about the
that?
secret ending. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you had seen the secret
Yeah.
ending. I meant to ask. Which is it's basically just yeah implying that Hugh somehow survived, which is fine because yeah I actually do want a sequel
Mm-hmm.
to this. It's rare to kind of come out of a game nowadays and just be like, okay, I actually like see a point in which they can iterate on this and can keep going with this.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, like that for me is what made like the ending doubly more impactful was just seeing like to the extent that like they were actually going for that kind of conclusion,
Mm-hmm.
and now it gives them a very interesting starting point with wherever they go in the future.
Yeah. No, totally agree. It's, it the secret ending, was somewhat comforting, but I'm not going to say
Yeah,
totally comforting, right? Because I'm like, yeah, okay, so Hugh is alive for now, right? Like
yes,
we don't know how long he'll be alive, right? Does that mean that a potential sequel is a race against the clock to try to get there?
yeah.
And obviously we don't know, and I'm sure Capcom has some
Are
ideas,
we going to be playing as them separately in the
right? Like
sequel as well? Because they're separated,
they're
a
separated,
lot of
right?
distance.
Does Diana find someone else to take up there, right? Obviously we don't know. Um, and then I had almost expected like a when we saw he was dying, I almost expected like a she's gonna know some way to put his
Yeah,
memory into one of these robots and whatever. And I will say I expected that, and I think that's because that has become somewhat of a like very much a trope of things that have happened. Oh, just move the consciousness to something else, and it's like keeping the
yeah.
person
Some
alive.
last minute ass pull. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was very glad that they didn't do that. I was glad they didn't do that until he sacrificed himself. Then I was like, wait,
Wait,
hold on,
wait.
wait, come back.
Yeah,
Um, so the secret ending gives you just a little bit of hope, right? Just
yeah.
a little bit, right? Unfortunately, that means that Hugh is also just stuck up there with Cabin, which I don't know how much I
Cabin,
could
that's
hear
his name.
Cabin talk to me, all day, every day. But, um, you
He's
know,
also stuck up there with all of those memories of Diana, like
all those
surrounded by her
memories.
drawings on all her stuff. That's gotta
Oh my
suck.
God. And all those robots, right, that
Yeah.
he can't take out on his own because
Oh
he
God.
needs someone to open them up so that he can,
Yeah.
and I think it'll be interesting too. I don't know that know the full extent of what um that does to a human, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's where you pick up the second one, right? Like maybe he is still alive, but somehow modified, or whatever.
Yeah.
They have a lot of wiggle room, but the killing off of one of the main characters for something that you're launching as a new IP is a brave move, and kudos
Yeah.
to them.
Especially like knowing that like the majority of people playing this probably aren't going to see the true ending. They might not even know that I think they say at the end that there is like, unknown signal. There's a ending to that. But like the majority of people who play video games, they don't beat them, let alone 100% them and
Mm-hmm.
see the true ending. Maybe they'll Google it or, look it up on YouTube like I did. But I don't know. It's still kind of a ballsy thing to do just to be like in a few years, they're gonna have like the trailer at like Summer Game Fest or a State of Play or something where it's gonna be Hugh, showing up again, and I bet you then like a bunch of people are gonna be like, wait, what? He lived, because it's an interesting thing to kind of obscure like that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess obviously this is not an RE one, but because it is Capcom, um, I guess it's almost no different than what they did with Requiem, right? So maybe this is Capcom trying different things because Requiem had the two endings, right?
Oh, okay. Uh, we should also make a note that we're spoiling Resident Evil
So I'm
Requiem
not going to
as
go
well.
deep into the endings, but there's
Okay,
two
all right,
endings, right?
yeah.
Which one is true? Which one is not, right? One of them, you
I think
know,
one of them's pretty
I
obviously
think I
canon,
think it's
but
pretty
yeah,
obvious,
yeah.
right? But if you only play it through the once,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
And you
okay.
haven't looked it up, right?
I do think I did read somewhere that I think if you do get the one that doesn't seem very canon, they do literally give you a prompt in the menu
They
to be like, "Do
do.
you want to go back and see that other one?"
Yeah,
So,
from what I've seen, they do, but I can't tell you the number of people that I know that got what I think is the non-canon ending, and we're just like,
really?
I'm not going back because they
Oh,
missed a thread of the story that was very important to the thread of the story. And I
yeah.
think, while it's not the thread of the story here in Pragmata, I do
Mhm.
think it's almost part of the reason that they're like, hey, we want you to 100% these things, right?
Yeah.
We want you to do this. So we're making it easy for you to follow along to say, here's what you're
Yeah.
missing. Here, here's where to find it. Uh, Take the tram into this space to find this
Yeah.
thing. Diana will help you find it with the scanning, right? And then when you finish your first playthrough, it's like, hey, unknown signal pops up, right? Like, so they are giving you the prompt, but I think there are plenty of people who may not actually understand why the prompt is so in your face. And it's not
Yeah.
like disrespectfully in your face. It's just like, hey, there's this thing. Don't you want to check it
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, that's why I think the majority of people, maybe not the majority, but like a good chunk of people probably will finish the game and not see the secret ending, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So that to me makes it a more of a risk, and more of an interesting move. I do hope that like if they are making a sequel that they made that ending with it in mind,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of the time these days with sequels and stuff we see things end on like a big note, or like a season of a show end on like a big finale, and then following that they didn't really know that they were going to get to make more, so it has some trouble kind of coming back from that.
Mm-hmm.
But given that this game seemed to be made with the idea that it was going to be a franchise, and that it was going to be, it was going to sell well because
Yeah.
they did a lot in their power, it seems, and it has sold very well. Um, I like to think that they put that ending in mind. They're hoping more so on the side that they get a sequel rather than, well, if we don't get a sequel, this is the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah. And I mean,
because that would be a bummer.
that would be a huge bummer. I do think that even with the secret ending, right? Could that be the end if they don't get a sequel for whatever reason? Yes, right?
Yeah,
It would be a sad
it'd be
end,
a bummer. Yeah,
right? Because they would be separate, they would be so far apart, and who knows how each of them would live out the rest of their days. Um, but I think it does definitely set up for the sequel, which I hope they get. And I think last time I checked, they sold over 2 million copies,
oh yeah,
right?
yeah. A few days ago they said that. Yeah,
Right, yeah, because
which
there was
is,
the new
I think it's
artwork.
getting a sequel. I think that's decided at this point.
Yeah,
Um,
does it mean we have to wait another 6, 7 years? Maybe, but if
mhm.
they put something out like this, right, that is this good, I'll wait.
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I have a feeling that like because this one took so long to make and to kind of get right, I have a feeling that if we were to see a sequel, it'd be out a little sooner. I actually wanted to highlight as well just the performances, because that scene, the ending scene
Oh my god.
in particular, the acting is incredible, especially, from Hugh and Diana, both of them. There was a reaction I watched from Maximilian Dude, who is a YouTuber streamer who does a lot of fighting game and Capcom related stuff. He has a daughter, and he played the ending to the game, and he cried so hard, especially at Diana's like screaming
Mm-hmm.
and stuff, because I think that the performances in this game are like subtly great. You know what I mean? Like they help really keep that tone that I was talking about up.
Yes.
You know, the kind of the lighthearted nature of it, but then they can handle the serious scenes when required. Like David Mencken I know plays Hugh, and he is in the Xenoblade games. He's one of the villains in the Xenoblade Chronicles games. Diana's actress, I was surprised to learn, is an adult woman. um, because I think that she plays the part great. Like it's very easy to suspend your disbelief and just be like, yeah, this
100%.
is a child, this is an android child I'm watching right now. But in reality, I believe the motion capture and the voice performance is a grown woman named Grace Safe. Um, and I think that it's interesting that like people have pointed to these performances as being noteworthy and being really great. Same with Resident Evil Requiem, because I think it means that like even if these stories aren't like high art, or if they're not trying to be the most serious, intense thing in the world, I like that these kind of performances can still have an impact on
Hmm.
people and can still stick with people. Even if they're not going for like Shakespeare in terms of like the writing or storytelling.
Yeah, I mean, I think not everything has to be high art. Not everything has to
Of
be,
course.
you know, and I know especially as video games start to be taken, more seriously and continue to be taken more seriously as like an entertainment medium, and an art form as well, right? I think it is very notable for for these two actors to be able to handle all of that and to portray that in a way where I think it would be harder because you don't have for Hugh, you don't have the visual cues of his face
Yeah.
for 90% of it, right? So you
Yeah,
really
that's
are
true.
going on tone of voice, the inflections of things, the spaces for breathing or the lack of space for breathing, right? And with Diana, while she is a bit more animated, in the back of your mind you still know that this is an AI, right?
Yes, yeah.
And yet all of these emotions are coming across in the childlike nature and wanting to learn, and it's believable that at times she is this brilliant computer that understands the science behind all the things that's happening on the spacecraft, but then
Yeah.
on the other hand is like, what's this slide, what am I supposed to do, like what is this water gun, like what do I do with these things, right?
Yeah.
And Hugh has to explain them to her, and to be able to have that dichotomy of things but not have a as the viewer slash player be like, oh, this doesn't feel right, this doesn't feel real, right? They get that across in such a fantastic way.
Yes. No, absolutely. And I think like what's really cool about it as well is because I was actually reading up just on like the casting and the performances for them, is that like the actors I think only met for like a table read or
Oh,
like
wow.
like a chemistry read, and all of the dialogue in the game is actually, I think Hughes was recorded first, and then Diana's was like recorded in response to Hughes. So
Wow.
that chemistry is kind of it's built entirely off the basis of them being, the well directed and well acted, just in a way that it probably wouldn't have worked if the dynamic of the actors wasn't as good as it was,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I want to say this about Hugh as well, like because I've seen people say that he's like a very simple character. He's not as interesting as maybe some other, you know, gruff male kind of middle-aged dude video game protagonists, as many as there are out there. And like I said, the tone of the game is lighthearted and stuff, but I think that it's really refreshing to play a game as a guy who's just nice
Mm-hmm.
after a while, like because there's so many, like even in Resident Evil, like there's so many like grumpy dude characters. Like you get into this game and like he's like immediately, because I just replayed the opening earlier today. He's immediately like nice to Diana. He's immediately like gentle with her and like very patient with
Yes.
her, and like he's immediately like, I need to like protect this child even though she's like an android or a pragmata. And it's like something that is never, it's, we're never meant to feel sorry that he's in this position, you know?
Mm-hmm.
It's always just straightforward, go go go, I'm taking this kid home with me. You know?
Yeah. And I think some of it is a little bit of, a little bit of self-preservation, right?
Mhm.
Because eventually, obviously, at first he's very much like, just stay behind, stay behind. And she's like, no,
Yeah.
no, I can help, I can help. And, so then it's like, oh, okay, yes, I will carry her everywhere, right? Yeah, she can just hang out on my back, right? But that last 5 minutes, right? Because she is infectious, right? Like she is just so delightful and,
Hmm.
chatty, and in their interactions, you do end up learning more about him. And I think, you know, yes, he's not rough around the edges in that way. Although clearly, he is here for his own reasons. And I think at one point he even says something about why he is like taking care of her, because he had people that took care of him, right? So it's like
Yes.
that is what
Yeah.
he has internalized and learned, right? Which
Hmm.
is which is great, because how many times do you have the protagonist where it's like, I didn't know my parents and I just had these people that took me and they treated me like crap, and they, whatever, right? There's always some like sob story that is the reason that these people become so hard on the outside, right? Whereas him, he's like, no, I had a, it was pretty decent, right? Like these people took me in, they
Yeah.
took care of me, and that was it. And now I'm gonna, pass it forward or play it forward, and they raised me to be a good person. So now I'm a good person for this kid,
Yeah.
right? It's not the woe is me, which
Hmm.
is which, like you said, is refreshing. I'm glad that we have that and we can see a different perspective. And yes, ultimately, unfortunately, it does lead to him being left behind on the spaceship, because he's so, he's willing to
Yeah.
sacrifice himself for her. But I think, having that moment, right? And hearing that from him, right? And it's those little nuances, I think, that build up his character. So I think it's yes, the game is short, but I think if you spend enough time with it, or you go back and you play it enough, and you hear the interactions between the two of them, you understand more of why he is the way he is.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you actually touched on something there that's like a theme in the game that I actually really love, as well as the idea that they're both orphans, right?
Hmm.
Because obviously, I mean, we didn't even touch on like the actual like subplot with Diana, where she's technically a an attempt at recreating one of the head scientist's daughters who had like an illness. And he was creating essentially all of these kind of clones in order to
Hmm.
try and heal her. Um, and I love the idea that, yeah, so when we find Diana, she's alone. There's only her, and I guess later we meet eight who are left. But for Hugh, like he's able to impart kind of his experience onto her, and his he's able to relate to her in that way that he also was, you know, raised as an orphan, but of
Hmm.
course he, you know, was adopted, and you know he had like a good upbringing, and he talks about that very openly, which is in and of itself a refreshing kind of way of looking at, you know, being an orphan in medium. A lot of the time that's like set up for tragedy and,
Yeah.
you know, sadness, which the game touches on briefly a little bit. But I really liked that the game wasn't, because look, there's been weirdos saying a lot of stuff about this game since it came out. I prefer to
Hmm.
not to go into that. But there were a lot of people who were saying that this game is trying to motivate people to have children. And it's like they're both orphans. If
Right.
anything, it's saying to like adopt children,
Right.
you know?
Tell me that
Because
you didn't play
it's
the game without telling me you didn't play the
yeah.
game.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, like that seems to be what the game is actually about, and you know, showing that these characters have that in common with each other, and that Hugh as a character has actually overcome a lot of stuff in his
Hmm.
life in order to be able to meet somebody like Diana and have that bond with her.
It's that like found family, right?
Of course, yeah.
And I think
which I'm a complete sucker for.
same,
Yeah,
same. And I think I think that's also what makes the game so beautiful, and then what makes it so bittersweet and heartbreaking at the end, right?
of course. Yeah,
Because of that, you found, you found a person that you connect with, right? You found someone that you want to take care of and see them walk a path similar to yours, because you had such a great experience, right? And you hear it in Hugh's voice a little bit as he's teaching Diana, about the things on Earth, and talking to her about the memories, and all of those small pieces that really add up, right? And you see that this really truly is a father who has found his, you know, spiritual daughter, or whatever term you want to, put in, right? Um,
Mhm.
because this is someone that helps him get through this traumatic experience, because he just lost his crewmates, his friends, right? And he talks a little bit
Yeah,
about them, right?
yeah. We do actually learn some stuff. Yeah,
But he doesn't dwell on them, right?
no.
And I think that is a testament to Hugh's character, where it's like, yes, this disastrous thing has happened, right? And at some point, I'm sure if he's on the ship on it by himself, he's probably, dealing with it in his own way, right? But he's like, okay, this is what we have to do now. There are moments where he talks about it and he's unpacking it, but then it's like,
Yeah.
let's move forward, right? And that is, you know, a lot like life, right? You have times where you
Hmm.
can sit and mourn, or think about these things and unpack it. But then you have to pick yourself up and you have to keep going. And he is showing Diana, that there is a way forward, right? There is
Yeah.
positivity. And the dealing with Diana and 8, where, he has to tell her a difficult life lesson, where it's like, sometimes not everybody can be spoken to, right? Sometimes,
Hmm.
just speaking it out isn't going to be enough. Like, we might have to deal with this in a different way, right? Sometimes you might have to let go of that friend, or, whatever it is that might be toxic in your life, right? Or, whatever.
Yeah.
So Diana is learning so much about life and what life is for the typical human experience, through
Yeah.
Hugh imparting this information with her in what might actually be like 3 or 4 days of time on the
Yeah.
ship, right? When you really
Yeah.
think about it.
No, absolutely. And like I know that in the post game there's actually like more dialogue that
Hmm.
you get. I think that fleshes out some of his crewmates and stuff. But I love that the game again has just this light tone, and the fact that it's not going to dwell, like you said, it's not going to dwell on these things. It's not going to dwell on kind of these awful things that are happening, because at the end of the day it's like Hugh as a character has like the consciousness to be like, okay, I have a mission, I have something I need to protect, I have something I need to do here, and let's just go do it, even if the for Diana, especially when it comes to 8, the reality is going to be harsh, that she's going to have to learn from it. um
And
and then
that's
like,
very honest, though. Like, when you think
yeah.
about a kid, right? It's like they want to be friends with everyone, right? And especially for
Mhm.
Diana, who I think sees 8, almost more like a sister, right? And it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
this is my sister. This is like another me, right? And
Hmm.
yet I have to, I can't talk to her until the very end, right after the big fight and everything. And she even says to Hugh, right, where I think Hugh says something like, "I'm sorry we couldn't save her," or whatever he says, and Diana says, "That's okay. At least I got to talk to her."
Yeah.
Right? Like, they got to have
Yeah.
that moment together of understanding each other's perspective, which,
Hmm.
again, shows huge growth from maybe 3 or 4 days ago,
Yeah.
where Diana's trying
A
to
couple hours
introduce
ago for the
herself.
player.
Right.
Yeah.
As Diana's trying to be like, DI99, whatever number she gives,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Hugh's just like, how about Diana? And she's like,
Yeah.
what? All right. So we've come so far in that amount of time. Um,
Hmm.
but it's those life lessons, but again, I think sort of mimicking what she's learning from Hugh, she understands that, she couldn't save 8, just like Hugh couldn't save his crewmates. And
Yeah.
now they have to get to Earth. They have to get home, right? And they have to keep moving. So it's that picking yourself up and being able to do what comes next in the moment, even if you're a little sad about it.
Yeah. it's a surprisingly like good and heartful story, you know? In a way that like, yeah, I imagine will rub some people the wrong way, or it will just kind of be like, oh, okay, this is very
Mm-hmm.
preppy, and it's not like dwelling on these things that I kind of wanted to take it more seriously and stuff. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's more like a Spielberg movie. It's more kind of lighthearted. I guess there's Spielberg movies that aren't lighthearted, but I should say something like an E.T. or something like that,
Oh yeah.
one of the ones that are lighthearted. Um,
It's also Capcom
yeah,
flexing that they can do a little bit of that, right? Because
yes,
your Resident Evils are going to be a bit more serious, right?
yeah,
And now
and they're
Capcom's
not
like,
making Devil May Cry, so
all right, you want
yeah,
Devil May Cry? Go watch the anime.
yeah,
Or don't.
or maybe I don't know.
That's why I was like, maybe don't. I don't know. I haven't watched it.
Yeah, I've maybe watched the first season.
But I think it's good for Capcom, to keep going on this, this high that they're on, but to show like we can do different things. Because I think for a long time, if you were to ask people like, what does Capcom do? They're like, well, Resident Evil, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay. And Resident Evil has a very specific tone for most of them, right? That
yeah,
follows. So now here's the flip side of that, right? Here's
mhm,
Capcom being like, that's not the only thing we do. We can also do
yeah.
this and do it
There's
well.
There's like weirdly a lot of Resident Evil in this as well, because I thought that as soon as like you're introduced to the fact that like, oh, these like robots have like a virus that's being spread throughout them, so they're being a little bit more kind of zombified, kind of. And then the whole stuff about the company that is mining on the moon, the whole backstory regarding you know the string of events that led to all of this, Diana's backstory and stuff. Like it is weirdly, Umbrella
Oh
Corporation
yeah.
e like Resident Evil. Like it's weirdly compatible with Resident Evil. Like I'm not saying that Diana's gone to Earth and suddenly there's like a zombie outbreak. That would be the worst timeline ending. But I think that it's interesting how like this game on its face is very different from Resident Evil, but I can still feel like I can tell people, hey, if you like the shooting in Resident Evil, you like the kind
Mm-hmm.
of story setup of Resident Evil, you might actually get a lot out of Pragmata, even though it's a very different kind of game.
Yes. Oh yeah, because the skeleton and like the skeleton and the DNA is still there, but the way that it is shown is very different, right?
Mhm.
And that's why it's like, that's why I say it's like we do this, but we also do this, right? Because here's the flip side of the tone of the
Yeah.
story, right? Here's, the inverse of gruff guy who is, rough around the edges and strong, can do it all on his own versus, like Hugh can't do it on his own, right? Hugh is not
No,
going to
yeah.
come in there and beat everything up the way that Leon Kennedy does, right? Like,
Yeah.
so you have things that are very similar, but then you have, that's why I say you have like the inverse, right? So you do that, and they do poke a little bit of fun at Resident Evil in the New York-ish section. There
Yes.
is like the poster, right? And I remember as
Yeah.
soon as I saw that, I was like, "Ha! I see what you're doing here."
Yeah, there's like a ghouls and ghosts one as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's a Mega Man reference in the hub area. There's a lot of like, because it was so weird before this game came out. There was a huge conspiracy that it was secretly a Mega Man game just because of the sci-fi setting and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of people compare it to Lost Planet. I've never played any of those, but
Okay.
apparently that was quite similar sci-fi kind of thing. There's a lot of love for Capcom. It almost feels like a Capcom kind of like greatest hits of sorts, because
Yeah.
it does have kind of the spectacle of something like a Devil May Cry, but then the action of something like a Resident Evil.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it's also very interesting. This game, they've said, the development staff was mainly composed of younger staff members and people who had worked at Platinum Games, which is a lot of ex Capcom people. I just think that's very interesting that you've got this new IP that's clearly about a little bit more of like an intimate kind of personal
Mm-hmm.
story, that or emotional story, that is actually being made by the younger staff, so seemingly might have like a bit longer legs like going into the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how you should launch an IP, like a new
Mhm.
IP, especially, if you're investing enough to make it a successful IP,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because you want, when it does well, you want that team, especially if they're passionate about it, to continue on with it, right? Because
yeah,
what made it, you almost have to look back, like what made it so special? Is it, the people that wrote it, the people who developed it? Is it the mix of everything? Like, let's give these people their time to shine with this IP, and then also have them continue on with its growth and with its next steps, right? So I think it's smart to have like a younger team also, because then they're gonna look at things a little bit differently, right? Maybe that's why the tone feels a bit more lighter, right? And maybe that's why
I think it is.
while there are segments that there
Yeah.
was one segment I was playing and I was like, oh great, is this where it turns into a horror game? Because it's darker and there are some things that
Yes,
like
yeah.
pop out at you. It doesn't keep that tone, right? It's just a little bit, and it is, again, I think, reminder, like, hey, we're still a Capcom game. Here's just a little bit of this, like, the scary stuff that you might be used
You
to from
like
like a
horror?
Resident Evil,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Yeah.
but it's, it's done well enough, and I think with the younger staff, including some of those, those pieces and things like that, it's like an homage. It's respectful to the
Yeah.
past, right? It's saying we acknowledge all of this and this is why we can do this now. And now how do we take it into the future? Which also, like, would be on brand with this whole thing where it's like Hugh took what he learned from, the people who adopted him, and he imparts that on Diana, and Diana can now continue forward in whatever way she chooses to with what she's learned
Yeah.
from Hugh, right? So it's this like generational learning and growth, right, that we're seeing
Yeah.
in the dev team and we're also seeing in the finished product.
No, absolutely. And that's part of the reason I think that there might be like a split in the next game where it might kind of lean a little further into that Resident Evil thing of having two characters to control with their own kind of mechanics. Because I think that they probably want to give Diana maybe a little bit of independence given everything
Mm-hmm.
that she learned in this game. And have Hugh kind of, you know, rely on himself in the ways that he depended on Diana for.
Yeah.
So it can kind of have symmetry with the first game a little bit instead of just being Pragmata 2, we're doing the same stuff
Mm-hmm.
again. Which I think would be potentially really cool for a sequel. I also though want to throw out my theory that for the second game, I think that there's going to be a little bit of a time skip just so that they can make Hugh look a little bit more gruff, have longer hair and longer facial hair, so that they can make Hugh more hot. Because Capcom seems to have had a good run with. It's like their business is kind of like, okay, if we can make our characters hot, we have a hit on our hands. This game, they managed to, they just managed to make a really good game and it worked there as well. But like Devil May Cry 5 and all of the Resident Evil games have always had this thing of just there's like a culture that exists
Mm-hmm.
outside of them that's just people being obsessed with how the characters look.
Okay, but what if, hear me out, what if Hugh sort of subverts that, and not fully subverts that, right? But instead of being the way that, they've made Leon hotter and some of these other characters, what if Hugh's hotness is more the dad bod? Like, what if it
That's what I'm
really
thinking.
like
No, that's
leans
part of
into
it.
like the full
Yeah.
dad bod, little bit of belly, not, not
No.
obese,
Okay.
just
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you
You mean it
know,
like that? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like that
I see
more
that.
than, you know,
Because they probably listened to a lot of people going, calling Leon daddy, and they were like, okay, yeah, all right, we'll lean into that then. We'll
right.
make
I mean,
a literal daddy.
lean into it, right? Well, and I think it would fit with this game, right? And again, if we're thinking like, oh, like some of the younger generation of people that are like working on this game, right? There is a
They're all
big
gooners.
there, yeah, kind of right. Like there's a big shift though in like what's attractive, whereas like the more muscly
Yeah.
guy I think is attractive to a certain age bracket, right? There
Hmm.
are people now, maybe slightly younger than me, who are like, no, it's attractive, like the dad bod is attractive, where,
Yeah.
again, you're not obese, you're not, you haven't let yourself go, but you're maybe a little bit more to love, right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of it also comes with like self-acceptance and, as the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
generations are more open to that. But I could very much see like Hugh has a bit more of a dad bod. Maybe the suit doesn't fit him as well, or he's had
Yeah.
to
That's what I was thinking.
modify,
Yeah, you can't fit into
you
the
know,
spacesuit.
the
Yeah.
suit's been modified a little bit. Him and
Yeah.
Cabin have worked
The
on it,
suit has a bit of a belly kind of compartment. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of that happens, right? And
Yeah.
and really lean into he is a dad, especially since Diana's not going to age,
Yeah. Yeah. No.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think you also don't want to, I think you don't want to have, a conventionally attractive Hugh, right? Because then I
Yeah.
think unfortunately that could start to tip into some of that territory that we don't want to dwell on, but
Yeah, let's yeah. This
so
is a difficult conversation to
it
have with
is.
Diana being a character that exists.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I think you do the dad bod thing, right? You don't do the Leon
Yeah.
Kennedy, I've bulked up.
Right, yes.
I
Yeah.
think you
We're
lean
not
it
going
the
to
other way.
push this as a gooner game. It's an acquired taste
Yes.
game. You know what I mean? You
Hmm.
need to be in it you need to be accepting of Hugh
Right. The
in order to
attractiveness
play
of
Pragmata
Hugh
2.
is not because, because I think, you know, as a straight woman who's attracted to men, right? The
Hmm.
attractiveness of Hugh is not his face, right?
Hmm.
Which we don't see for like 90% of the game, right?
Yeah. And
His
he looks
voice
like the
is
most PS3
right,
white
most
guy in a video
generic,
game of all
whatever,
time. Yeah.
right? What
Yeah.
is attractive about him is the personality, the demeanor, and the care
Yeah.
towards Diana, right?
Hmm.
Obviously, that means you have to play the game to get that, but it is that which I think makes him attractive, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to see, okay, now let's make him sexy. I don't need him to be sexy, right?
Yeah.
When I want sexy, I look at Leon. Leon is not the type of guy that I'm bringing home to mom. Leon
Yeah.
is the one that like I'm play around with for a little bit and then send on his way. Whereas Hugh is like,
Damn.
this is who I bring home to mom, right? This is, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So I would want to see it lean that way, if anything, because then it's like, oh look, here's just a guy taking care of his daughter and making sure that she's good and sacrificing himself, and he's got
Yeah.
a nice house by the beach somewhere,
I mean,
right?
that's not going to be cheap. He's got a well-paying job by the sounds of
I,
things.
I mean, there was one
Going
point
to
where
the
he said
moon.
that. I was like, why are you on the moon, bro? You could be at the
Yeah.
beach.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay, I think that's a sign that we've probably run out of things to talk about for the story. Is there anything else you want to add just before we
um,
move on?
as far as the story, um, I think I want to talk just a little bit more about 8 because it leads
Of course, yeah.
into the whole reason that this is happening, right? So 8 you meet in like chapter 3. Um or
Yeah.
the end of
Yeah.
2, I can't remember, as a cat at first, like sending
Yes.
um sending their cognizance, I guess. And Diana
Yeah.
is following this. Um and 8 unfortunately ultimately becomes the villain of the story. And it was really interesting that the first time we meet 8, like I felt like her hair was a bit more blonde, right? Not
Mhm.
as blonde as Diana, but then by the time she's like full evil, her hair is white.
Yeah.
And I just remember being like, oh, I'm like, time to go kill baby Sephiroth, right? Because it was just like,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but I think Diana and 8 are cautionary tales about what
Yeah.
AI can be, right? Which I think is also very interesting because I think, especially in the day and age that we are, where AI is everywhere, um, you know, 8 takes what happened to the scientist, right? And what the scientist has shared about the death of his daughter and takes it as, well, now I have to enact revenge in his memory, right? And there's
Yeah.
vengeance and there's all this, right? Whereas Diana, probably because of Hugh's intervention with her, right? And not an intervention, but because of Hugh being with her and her being able to see that humans aren't all bad,
Mhm.
Diana is like, she has these memories now, so she knows logically what happened that has led the scientists to want to do this, but she still can't bring herself to try to destroy humanity and Earth, right? And I think, again, cautionary tale, because it's like we have AI as tools. We know that it's learning. We have all of this, and then it is really, what is it learning, right? So if you're learning from a Hugh who is still going to be optimistic and teach you that there is still good out there, and how do you move forward, maybe not so bad, right? If you are an AI that is just seeing death, despair, destruction is your next thing, right?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to also see the two sides of the same coin and how they interpret the events because of what was learned prior to that information being shared with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the game does a very interesting job of kind of defining what it kind of sees
Mm-hmm.
as AI. I think that that's like the idea with like when they get there at the beginning of the game, they basically there is this kind of commentary on like, oh, they say soon that like, we won't even need humans up here anymore. It'll just be all the AI. And then I think it's Hugh says, yeah, and then they'll send us up here when they mess up, which I think is surprisingly a pretty funny take on actual real world and
Mm-hmm.
implementation of like generative AI and stuff, in which companies just can't escape the reality that even if they lay off a bunch of people, they're still going to need people to actually like handle the AI and make up for when it inevitably makes a bunch of really awful mistakes.
Yeah.
Um, but I think that that's definitely an interesting spin on it as well, is that like, yeah, there are two different sides of how AI can like interpret things. And it's like when, there is a human kind of influencing it, and it is working in tandem with
Mm-hmm.
people, that there are benefits to it, or it can be productive, or it can have value, versus when we don't take care of it, like how Eight doesn't have anybody, she doesn't have a relationship with Hugh, she doesn't have a relationship with anybody, she only has what she knows, and
Mm-hmm.
it's made her bitter. That essentially corrupts her. it,
Yeah.
it it puts her down on a dark path, which I think ultimately the game's trying to say stuff about family there,
Mm-hmm.
and just general kind of human, uh the value of relationships,
Yeah.
and the value of education, and having people to support you emotionally. But I think there's also, yeah, there's like a little bit of something to infer from that about the nature of technology and artificial intelligence in the real world, because the game is very aware that it can't exist with its kind of magical version of AI
Mm-hmm.
in a reality in which we are constantly hearing about AI.
Yes. You can't escape it, and
Yeah.
I think it's also really I think that's also really told well in all the emails and the files that you
Yes.
find
Yeah.
throughout, because the emails and the files also are telling, I don't want to say like, plot C or D or whatever, but there are these storylines that you can
Yeah.
follow through the emails. Um, because some of them are talking about that same head scientist. But there's one name that for some reason, this one stuck in my head. I think it was Sharon, where you can literally follow Sharon from when she is working on there to being like transferred to another department to her wanting to like leave for whatever reason. So you
Yeah.
have these like through lines of people that were also working on the ship if you decide to like read through all of them, right?
Yeah, again,
So
very Resident Evil.
yeah, so
Yeah.
there are these other stories that are going on to sort of fill in the gaps of what was happening on this, spaceship, or landing site, whatever, while they were there. So you can also get the full sense of what was happening, not just, oh, well, Diana was in seclusion and Eight was working with the scientists and, whatever. Like, no, you can see what everyday life was sort of like for these people while they were
Yeah.
here. Unfortunately, it seems like they have all succumbed to everything else that has happened on this,
Yeah.
on this shuttle. But,
Which is there's a little bit like with the idea of the virus. There's a little bit of it playing into this, real world idea of enshittification,
mm-hmm,
which I don't know if that's a scientific term, but it's a term I've seen thrown around a lot. Where naturally, just because of like the you know defunding, or the kind of the want to decrease costs for technology, things just generally become more shitty to use. Like things just
yeah,
generally lose their value, and they lose their convenience factor. The idea that like there was a period in which smartphones were actually more convenient than they are right now. Or, I
yeah.
mean, you can look at Twitter. I think Twitter is a great example of that. Used to
Uh,
be a functioning website, and now it's not anymore. And I think that there's this idea as well there that like once the you know virus kind of broke out here, all they kind of did was just send more people to go up and kind of get consumed by it. There's this company lingering in the background that we're reading these emails for that has more it could be doing to protect the people that they're just using disposably up to do this stuff. And I think some of the emails kind of get into that a little bit more as well.
Yeah, I think that's the really interesting thing. So I don't always read everything in every game, but I think
Yeah.
for this to continue the world building, it's definitely worthwhile. Especially since, again, if this does become like their next big franchise, and as
Hmm.
they want it to be their next big IP, I think especially in this first one, since they're setting so much of the groundwork for what Edis is, right? Like get to know
Edis,
it.
that's the name of it. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was eluding you the whole time.
it's like get to know it from that perspective. And then I would say whatever they do in the second one, let's see, right? Is Edith trying to be the savior and Diana's like, hell no, I know better, right? Or,
Mhm.
you know,
Has it made its way to Earth? Like,
right,
and like inevitably at some point, like,
right.
and maybe it is an Umbrella thing, because Umbrella kind of in Resident Evil has a lot of the commentary that I'm kind of
Hmm.
talking about. Maybe it's a thing where they kind of wanted it to come to Earth secretly, they
Right.
wanted to have control,
Yeah. So I think it'll be interesting, but as far as the story is, it was really interesting to me seeing the difference between Diana and Eight, and
Hmm.
why, and then having some of those gaps filled in with the emails and stuff like that. Because I'm like, okay, yeah, so Eight really did have nobody else, right? And Diana was really
Yeah,
left in storage, even though at some point there were all these people working here,
yeah,
right? There was no other connection with these two. Um, so I think that
yeah,
that loneliness versus connection is really interesting in the story.
yeah. No, it's a really cool, like, again, like it enforces those kind of themes of family and having somebody to lean on emotionally.
In a 13 to 20 hour package, depending on if you want to like,
Yeah, it took me like
100% or not.
12 hours.
Yeah,
Yeah.
first playthrough story wise, like 12, 13. I'm not so good at shooters, so like maybe closer to 14, 15 hours, but you know
I
it's not a
didn't do a lot
long
of the
game.
side stuff though at my first go. So yeah.
Yeah, it's not long, but it hits a lot of it hits a lot of themes very well.
No, yeah, and it's so focused. Like I mentioned that earlier with the idea that like the pacing is super good in it, but it is very focused. It manages to, because we've been talking about things that aren't necessarily concluded in this game, but they seem like they're setting up something else. It
Hmm.
manages to create like a world and a universe in a very tight kind of setting,
Yeah,
in a short amount of time, while also having a good through line that gives you like a conclusion, as opposed to just everything feeling like it hinges on sequels or a
hmm,
universe being built out. It's like, no, if you're here just for Hugh and Diana's uh relationship, which is the main focus of the story, you're gonna see a conclusion to that.
yeah.
Whether it is the conclusion to that, probably not. But I mean, it could be like if they were to stop doing it here, it would just be unfortunate. But it wouldn't be. It wouldn't have like a bad unresolved
Hmm.
ending. It would just have an ending that felt like it could have continued.
Yeah, 100%. It could have continued, but if this is for whatever reason the only ending, I I won't be upset as a player. I'll just be upset emotionally that I
Yeah,
don't see them reunited, right? But
sure.
I do hope that it gets more, but I could see where, they if they really wanted, they could decide to go in a totally different direction. Not Hugh
Hmm.
and Diana, right? Maybe there's other Pragmata
I have
out there
thought
for
about that.
whatever
Yeah,
reason, right? I mean, I have to assume that with this big corporation, you are on the moon, so you must be pretty big and expansive, right? There's probably other people doing similar work, right?
hmm,
Um, Using similar technology like Pragmatas. So
yeah,
you could tell a totally different story and maybe, you know, you hear about Diana or you see Diana, but she's not the main focus, right? I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know
Or
what they
maybe
have
even for like a
planned.
DLC or something.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but I could see a world in which they keep the Pragmata title, but you're dealing with different characters in different settings.
yeah. I don't think that that's what they will do just based on this ending, but I definitely see a scenario in which they could
Mm-hmm.
do something like that. And I think that that's a testament to the game's ending of not feeling overly dependent on the fact that, because there's been so many things that have come and gone,
Yeah.
have been like, oh, we're a new IP, and then they never get a sequel, and it's just okay. There's like franchises that have started, but we have books and an animated movie and all of these things going on, and then they just come out, don't
Mm-hmm.
sell, and we all forget about them eventually. This doesn't seem like one of those. It
No.
seems like one where like they had a failsafe for if it didn't sell well, it has sold well. We're almost guaranteed to see Hugh and Diana again.
I hope so.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
That's it for me. No. I really enjoyed my time with all of it.
Yeah. It's a great game. It's a gorgeous looking game. Like we didn't really touch on the visuals of it, but oh my god, Diana's hair is incredible. I was playing on PS5. I know that you were playing on PC, but I was playing on PS5 and I was the base PS5 and I was playing resolution mode because I realized that actually runs at 60 frames and I was like, wow, this game looks really good, I think if you see the PS5 Pro version, you definitely look at the PS5 version, you're like, okay, I see a little definitely areas where it's downgraded, but I'm more than happy to play it this way. And then at one point, the frame rate was kind of going a little wonky on me, so I dipped to performance mode. As soon as I dipped to performance mode, I was like, "Her hair, what happened?" It's nowhere near as like, as detailed as it was in the resolution mode.
Yeah, no, I started so when I first played Pragmata, I had a I played it on PC. I had a 3070 graphics card,
Okay, yeah.
which is like 8 gigs of memory, whatever.
Mhm.
Um, I then got a 5060 Ti
Whoa.
with 16 gigs, and the difference was huge.
Yeah.
I bumped up the settings. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, and I was like, wow, this is gorgeous. And I think I said this before. It was like the space aspect, like it was so good, and it just absorbed me so much
Mhm.
that there was a moment where I was like, I think I might have just unlocked like a fear of space because
Yes. Yeah.
I'm in control, and it's the portion where you're like actually outside of
Mhm.
and you're on the surface of the moon, so your gravity is different, you're moving slower. And I was like, oh, here's this space worm that is like coming after me, and here is just this open universe of sky, and
Yes. Yeah.
I'm moving so slow, and all these things happen. I was just like, oh my God, I was like my brain is struggling right now. Like I don't it wasn't like motion sickness and like I'm gonna be sick, but I was just like, oh, there is this like
Yeah.
uncomfortability that I'm feeling in my skin right now. And
Yeah, it's like liminal horror.
yeah, I was just like,
Yeah,
oh,
it's
this is, but again, like it's because it looks so good
yeah.
that while I'm controlling it, I could feel myself like in it and absorbed in it. But yeah, I mean, all the little details, the way that like her hair moves and the way that it looks and the details on her face when you do get like the
Yeah.
close-ups.
The Times Square
Oh my God,
level, the look of that just with all the broken screens is so cool.
it's it's so cool. And as someone, I'm right outside New York City, so I'm there a lot. And I just
Yeah.
remember the first time I saw pictures of that level when like previews and stuff were coming out. I remember being like, "Oh my God." Like I can imagine being there in the moment.
Yeah.
The one thing that I did say, and there's a clip of this somewhere. I did say you could tell how long this game was in production because there is a billboard that is advertising like a cheeseburger meal. and it says the cheeseburger meal is like $15.99. And I literally, and I'm streaming this, so I stopped there.
Oh my
And I
god.
was like, you could tell this game took too long because there is no burger in Times Square that is $15.99
They
nowadays.
got space
Unacceptable.
inflation.
I was like, no, that burger is easily $25. Ain't no
Oh
way
my
that you're
god.
getting right. And again, obviously a lot of this in jest. And it's just
That's
because,
depressing.
like, I know I'm just like New York City's my home, right? So, but
Mhm.
I was just like, no, this is wrong because like this is how long
Yeah.
it took you that you didn't account for the rising costs, which,
Yeah.
again, being a little cheeky. But
I
that
do love
level,
that
gorgeous.
in yeah, I do love that in Japanese games though when they make games kind of for like a Western or American audience. There are these little kind of cultural things that don't always mesh well. Like I love Deadly Premonition for that because it's just so weird and not compatible with reality. That's just so special. But yeah, that level in particular is so cool. There is this dissonance because it's on the moon, it's in
Hmm.
space. It's 3D printed, which I don't know what kind of 3D printers they. Well, I guess that's kind of the point of the narrative. They've got the moon 3D printer.
Yep.
Um, that it's a Luna filament. Everything
Hmm.
is built using. They've got like this substance that they're mining from the moon
Yep.
to 3D print things, which is just weird and cool and definitely a byproduct of a concept that came out around like 2019, 2020. That was
Hmm.
around the time that we were hearing a lot about like SpaceX and things like that, you know. Um but it's cool that it exists now and it has a lot of really modern kind of sci-fi ideas that I find very interesting. And again, it came out just in a bombardment of other things set in space and the moon in
Yeah.
April of 2026.
Really interesting that like the last scene that we see Diana is on the beach, and obviously there's reasons why. Uh, but
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that's also the last scene in Project Hail Mary. They're on a beach.
Yes, there is a beach in the final
Right? I'm
scene.
like, wait a
Yeah,
second,
the Project Hail Mary.
there's a
Yeah,
beach.
yeah. No, it was so weird. It was like I was watching that movie. I was like, is this movie getting me more excited for Pragmata? This is really weird. They have nothing to do with each other. And then I was playing Pragmata, and I was like, is this getting me excited for Saros? This is weird. Why is there so much stuff of this based on like the
Space,
same kind of idea? I'm sure there's something else I'm forgetting as well. I think
possibly.
I feel like there is. There's the Artemis 2 mission as well, so that was
Hmm.
also happening around the time. But yeah, no, there it is. There's the I guess the space media of
Hmm.
spring 2026.
Yeah, I think it
This will
just
go down in history.
yeah. I think Pragmata just makes it also very approachable, even though
Yeah.
it's in space and um, sci-fi-ish. It is sci-fi, but it's not done in a way that feels too sciency,
Oh
that
yeah,
it could
it's
be
not like
unapproachable for
hard.
people. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I have not read the Project Hail Mary book. I probably
Mhm.
never will because it is much more science, right? Still
Yeah.
science fiction, but much more science. Whereas the movie tamps it down a bit to make it approachable for the everyday audience. And I think Pragmata does the same thing where
Yeah.
you're not leaning too heavy into the science. You are making it so that people like me who normally are not sci-fi space sort of interested gamers are like, I'm gonna give it a shot, right? Like, because
Yeah.
it talks about it, but it doesn't dwell on it so much. It's part of the narrative. It's part of the reason that we're here. It's part of the reason that you can rebuild Diana. But we're not diving crazy deep where you're gonna lose people.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's a testament to how they really put this package together to get people to give their game a shot.
Yeah. Absolutely. The other thing I just remembered it was Starfield came out on PS5, but I didn't play that.
Oh yeah, not playing
So
that.
yeah, no, I'm good. Anyways, I think that's everything. Do we have anything
Yeah,
else to add before we move on? Everything we've talked about everything, visuals,
people
story,
should play it.
gameplay.
That's it. That's
Everybody, yeah. It is. It is one of the games you can recommend to just about anybody
Hmm.
because like there's multiple difficulty modes, but it's also on everything. Like it's on Switch too, it's on PC, and it's a pretty well optimized version. I played it on my laptop, the demo, and it ran at 60 frames, on some of the lower settings. And this is a 4 gigabyte, video memory,
Hmm.
uh, laptop. So I think that it's pretty easy to recommend to just about anybody that plays video games.
Oh yeah, I played
Um,
it on standard. I never even dropped it to casual, and I was able to finish it. I mean, were there a few
yeah,
bosses that I died a few times? Actually, I think there was only one boss that I died a few times. I actually died more to just being swarmed by enemies because I'm not
yeah,
great at aiming and shooting. So when there was multiple things going on,
yeah. It can get
lost the point.
overwhelming with the having to constantly just be like, what's going on this side of the screen? What's going on this side of the screen? Like I was doing so much of the hacking mini game that I was forgetting to shoot at times. I was forgetting that you have to hit weak points. I was
Hmm.
forgetting about multiple weapons and stuff. Like it can get pretty intense, but I feel like
But
it
still
again the
approachable.
game is yeah, the game's so well paced that like it never feels like it's overwhelming you with mechanics. It's
Hmm.
always dishing them out at just the right amount of distance in between for you to get to know them, you know?
Yeah. If I could finish it at standard, even people who really, really are not like, shooter people, can play it at standard or in the casual difficulty and absolutely
Yeah.
enjoy it.
But we're saying this at the end of the spoiler discussion. We probably should have said this during the spoiler-free
I know.
discussion. But as always, we always end this show being like, if you're just listening and you haven't played the game, you should play it. I think it'll definitely get mentioned for a couple of Game of the Year stuff at the end of the year. I think it's been too big to kind of not do that, even if we still have a lot of big games set to come out for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Um,
I'd be
yeah,
shocked if it
oh,
didn't. I do hope that at the at the very least, um, I hope at least one of them gets nominated for like voice acting.
yeah. I would
If not
say
both, but
probably I would say probably Diana's if I had
hmm.
to pick one, just because of how convincingly she played like a child character
Oh,
and how
absolutely.
my brain was not switching off. Like she didn't hit it in the kind of anime way that like games that look this intense visually can kind of have
Hmm.
when it's like a child character, or even something like I don't know, like the Donkey Kong game where it was like, okay, that's very
And
clearly like
Pauline,
an
yeah.
adult woman, yeah, playing Pauline, but there that's a little bit more cartoony, so you can kind of forgive it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah, I just hope they don't get snubbed because it is very, very worth at the very least a nomination.
yeah, I'd say at the very least it'll be in like best action game, something like that. Um, but
And
yeah.
if not, we're
Anyways,
fighting.
yeah, yeah. Well, we'll try and give it something here, surely, surely. Even though it might just be me and you who played it for the website, we'll band together like we did for Dispatch, and try and get a campaign for your consideration, Gamer Social Club.
Uh,
Anyways, thank you so much for watching yet another episode of Gamer Social Club Spoilercast. We're hoping to get more of these at you soon, as there are more games that catch our attention that we want to talk about that we have multiple of us playing. Candy, can you just let people know where they can find you?
Sure. You can find me every week on GSC's Girl Pod. We put up episodes every Monday. And if for some reason you want to see me in an animated form, I stream on Twitch 3 days a week, twitch.tv/candyxbomb.
Awesome. Yeah, I am. Once again, I'm Dara. I'm introducing myself again. I am just floating around on the website. I write news, I write reviews. I am working on a couple of reviews right now. So expect to read more of me there. And you can also find everything else from everybody on the website. On the website, you can find again our news, reviews, guides, editorials. I'm hoping to make a few more of those soon as well. And you can join the Discord if you want to be part of the discussion. If you want to see what we're playing as well, generally we will talk about bits and pieces that we're playing and things that we have reviewed on the
Hmm.
Discord as well. So if there's any ideas for things that you'd like to hear a spoiler cast for, you can drop them in there and we will almost surely see them in there as well. So
I'm
thank you
chronically online.
so.
We'll see them.
Oh yeah, I always have the Discord open. It's like a tick now, essentially.
And we have game
Even
nights. We do have
Of
game
course,
nights.
yes, we have the game nights as well. I need to get in on a few of those. I want to play Dead by Daylight. Uh, Thank you so much for listening to this, and we will see you again soon, hopefully. Goodbye.
Bye.